If every U.S. state went to war with each other, the first thing to consider would be the vast differences in population, resources, and geography across the country. Large, heavily populated states like California, Texas, and Florida would initially have the upper hand, mobilizing vast numbers of troops and using their economic power to fuel the conflict. These states would likely focus on capturing key cities and resources, relying on their established infrastructure and military might. However, smaller, less populated states like Alaska or Wyoming would capitalize on their terrain. Alaska, with its rugged wilderness and remote location, could prove nearly impossible to conquer without a massive commitment of resources. Wyoming, with its open spaces, might wage an effective guerrilla war, making use of its natural cover and smaller but highly mobile forces. Meanwhile, states like New York and Illinois would focus on their high-tech infrastructure and dense urban centers. New York, with its financial and media hubs, would likely control much of the information flow, while Illinois' central location could serve as a strategic command center for multiple states. The Midwestern states, like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, would likely form alliances to counterbalance the larger states, using their manufacturing power and logistical advantages to provide crucial supplies and troops to smaller, allied states. In terms of resources, the Great Plains states would have an edge in agricultural production, and the Pacific Northwest, with its forests and fishing industries, would hold key environmental assets. States like Nevada and Arizona, with their vast deserts, might struggle to maintain supply lines or face harsh conditions, but their locations could provide valuable choke points and control over critical routes. As the war rages on, the conflict would become less about territorial conquest and more about resources, food, water, and energy, making states with agricultural and natural resource wealth incredibly valuable. The war would likely devolve into a brutal war of attrition, with states using tactics like sabotage, cyber warfare, and alliances to maintain any advantage. With no clear military hierarchy, every state would need to fend for itself, leading to shifting allegiances, power struggles, and widespread devastation. Eventually, the conflict would break down into smaller, localized skirmishes. With the collapse of major infrastructure and communication systems, the United States would fragment into a series of fractured territories. In this dystopian scenario, the nation's once proud unity would be nothing more than a memory, and the survivors would be left to rebuild in a fractured and divided land.